Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Let's start by holding space for a powerful truth. Our worth is not up for negotiation. Begging, at its core, is an act rooted in scarcity. When we beg, whether it's for love, attention, respect, or validation, we're operating from a belief that we are lacking something essential and that we must plead or perform to receive it. But let me ask you this: who taught you that you needed to beg for what you deserve? Society often conditions us to think that our value is something external, something we have to earn or prove. From a young age, we're rewarded for pleasing others, being agreeable, working harder, doing more, and always showing up, even when it costs us our peace. It's no wonder that as adults, we sometimes find ourselves begging in ways we don't even realize. You might not be on your knees, but begging can look like staying in relationships where your needs are ignored because you're afraid of being alone. It can look like over-apologizing for things that aren't your fault just to keep the peace. It can look like saying yes when every fiber of your being is screaming no because you don't want to disappoint someone. Here's the hard truth: begging doesn't lead to fulfillment. It leads to resentment, exhaustion, and a deeper sense of unworthiness. The more you beg, the more you reinforce the belief that you are not enough as you are, that you have to fight for crumbs instead of claiming the feast you deserve. But let me tell you something: you are already enough. Not because of what you do, what you give, or how others see you. You are enough because you exist. Because you are a person with thoughts, feelings, dreams, and a heart that beats. Their worth is inherent. It's not something that anyone can give or take away. So, how do we stop begging and start embracing our inherent worth? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to the areas in your life where you might be begging, whether it's for affection, approval, or opportunities. Ask yourself, am I holding on to something or someone that isn't meeting me halfway? Once you identify these patterns, you can start to shift them. Boundaries are a radical act of self-love. They're not about keeping people out. They're about protecting your energy and making space for what truly aligns with your worth. When you set boundaries, you're telling the world, I deserve relationships and opportunities that respect and honor me. Stop waiting for others to tell you that you're good enough, smart enough, or lovable enough. Start affirming those truths for yourself. Validation from others is nice, but it's a bonus, not a requirement. When you learn to validate yourself, you become less dependent on external approval. Letting go of the urge to beg can be terrifying. It means releasing control and trusting that what's meant for you will find you. But here's the beautiful part: when you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you stop begging, you start receiving from a place of abundance, not desperation. Every time you choose to walk away from something that doesn't align with your worth, whether it's an unreciprocated relationship, a toxic work environment, or an unfair situation, you are reclaiming your power. Celebrate those moments. They are proof that you're stepping into the fullness of who you are. When you stop begging, you send a powerful message to yourself and the world: I am worthy of more than this. And in that moment, you begin to open yourself to the relationships, opportunities, and experiences that are worthy of you. So stand tall, and remember, you don't have to beg for what's already yours. Your worth is not a question. It's a truth. And it's time to start living like you believe. Chasing is an active pursuit, a tireless sprint after something or someone we believe we need to feel complete. It can be a relationship, a goal, recognition, or even a sense of belonging. But the truth is, when we chase, we aren't just reaching for something external, we're running away from ourselves. The idea of chasing is deeply ingrained in us. We're taught to hustle for success, prove our worth, and strive to be the best. While ambition and hard work have their place, there's a fine line between pursuing something with intention and chasing something out of desperation. Chasing often comes from a place of fear that if we stop running, we'll be left with nothing. But here's the paradox: the more you chase, the more elusive what you're chasing becomes. Think about it. When you chase someone's attention, you often push them further away. When you chase happiness, it feels just out of reach. And when you chase success at the expense of your well-being, it stops feeling like success at all. So how do we step away from the chase and reclaim our peace? 1. Understand what drives the chase. Chasing is often rooted in insecurity or a fear of lack. Maybe you're chasing love because you don't feel lovable on your own. Or perhaps you're chasing success because you think your worth depends on your achievements. Recognizing what's fueling your chase is the first step to breaking free from it. Ask yourself, am I chasing because I truly want this, or because I'm afraid of what it means if I don't have it? 2. Shift from chasing to attracting. There's a profound difference between chasing and attracting. Chasing is about effort, grasping, running, striving. Attracting is about alignment, being in a state where what you desire naturally comes to you. When you stop chasing and start focusing on your own growth and well-being, you create a magnetic energy. You draw in the relationships, opportunities, and experiences that align with your true self. 3. Release the need for control. Chasing often comes from a desire to control outcomes. We think if I just work hard enough, push hard enough, or show enough effort, I can make this happen. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let go. Trust that what's meant for you won't require you to exhaust yourself trying to hold on to it. 4. Set healthy boundaries. Chasing can blur your boundaries. In the pursuit of what you want, you might overlook red flags, ignore your own needs, or compromise your values. By setting clear boundaries, you remind yourself that your peace is non-negotiable. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out, they're about creating space for what truly aligns with your life. 5. Practice mindful presence. Chasing takes you out of the present moment and places your focus on a future that hasn't happened yet. When you're always looking ahead, you miss the beauty of where you are right now. Reclaiming your peace means grounding yourself in the present and finding contentment in the here and now. 6. Redefine success. Sometimes we chase because we're following someone else's definition of success. Maybe it's the societal script that says you need a certain job, a certain relationship, or a certain lifestyle to be happy. But true peace comes from defining success on your own terms. Ask yourself what truly matters to me, what brings me joy, fulfillment, and meaning. 7. Celebrate the power of stillness. In a world that glorifies hustle, stillness can feel counterintuitive. But there's immense power in being still. When you stop chasing, you create space for reflection, healing, and clarity. You allow yourself to reconnect with your inner voice, the one that knows what you need far better than the noise of the world around you. 8. Trust the flow of life. When you chase, you're often swimming upstream, fighting against the current. But life has a natural flow. When you stop resisting and start trusting, you'll find that the right things have a way of finding you. It doesn't mean you stop putting in effort or working toward your goals. It means you do so from a place of peace, not panic. A final thought. Reclaiming your peace isn't about giving up on what you want. It's about recognizing that you don't have to run yourself ragged to get it. When you stop chasing, you step into a state of calm confidence. You begin to trust that what's meant for you will come not because you begged for it, but because you created a life where it belongs. So let go of the chase, breathe deeply, and remind yourself, I am enough. I have enough. And I trust that what's meant for me will never miss me. Peace isn't something you find by running. It's something you discover by standing still. Communication is the heartbeat of every relationship, whether personal or professional. It's the way we connect, share our thoughts, express our emotions, and create understanding. But here's the thing, communication isn't meant to be a solo act. It's a dance, a dialogue, a two-way street. When you find yourself doing all the writing, whether it's texts, emails, notes, or calls, you're carrying the weight of a connection all on your own. And let's be honest, that's not how healthy relationships work. Healthy communication thrives on reciprocity, a mutual exchange of effort, care, and engagement. Stop writing doesn't mean cutting people off or refusing to reach out. It means recognizing when the flow of communication has become one-sided and having the courage to pause and reevaluate. Let's break this down further. One-sided communication can be subtle at first. Maybe you're always the one initiating plans, checking in, or following up. Maybe you send a long, thoughtful message only to receive a one-word response, or worse, no response at all. Over time, this imbalance becomes draining. It sends a message, intentional or not, that your effort isn't being matched. Ask yourself, am I the only one keeping this connection alive? If the answer is yes, it's time to reflect on why that's happening and whether the relationship is serving you. Reciprocity in communication doesn't mean a perfect 50/50 split. It doesn't mean keeping score or expecting immediate responses every time. Life gets busy and people have different communication styles. But reciprocity does mean mutual respect and effort. It means both parties value the connection enough to show up, engage, and prioritize each other when reciprocity is absent. It's not just about the missed texts or calls, it's about what those absences represent. They often point to a deeper issue, a lack of investment in the relationship. Every time you pour energy into a connection without receiving anything in return, you're depleting yourself. Your energy, your time, thoughts, and emotions is precious. It's a gift, not something to be taken for granted. Matters.by continuing to write, call, or reach out without reciprocity, you're sending the message that your time and effort don't require respect or acknowledgement. But they do. Protecting your energy means setting boundaries. It means recognizing when it's time to stop writing and start prioritizing yourself. Stopping the endless stream of messages and check-ins can feel terrifying. What if the other person doesn't reach out? What if the relationship fades away? These are valid fears, but they also reveal a hard truth: a relationship that requires you to carry it on your own isn't sustainable. Pausing your efforts creates space for clarity. It allows you to see who truly values the connection and who doesn't. And yes, sometimes the silence that follows can be painful. But that silence can also be the most honest feedback you'll ever get. Before deciding to stop writing, consider communicating your feelings. Sometimes people aren't aware of the imbalance. They might assume you're fine with being the initiator or think their lack of response isn't a big deal. A simple conversation can bring clarity. I've noticed that I'm always the one reaching out, and it makes me feel like our connection isn't as important to you. I value our relationship and want to make sure we're both putting in effort to maintain it. This kind of honest, vulnerable communication can either strengthen the relationship or confirm that it's time to step back. Either way, you gain clarity. If you've paused your efforts and the other person doesn't step up, it's not a reflection of your worth. It doesn't mean you're unlovable or that you did something wrong. It simply means that the connection wasn't balanced, and that's okay. Letting go doesn't have to be dramatic or bitter. It can be a quiet, graceful act of self-respect. You're not giving up, you're choosing to invest your energy where it will be valued. When you stop writing and walk away from one-sided relationships, you create space for connections that are reciprocal and fulfilling. You open the door for people who see your worth and meet you halfway. These are the connections where you don't have to chase, beg, or overextend because they're built on mutual care and effort. Stopping your endless writing isn't about playing games or manipulating the other person into reaching out. It's about trusting the natural flow of relationships. If the connection is genuine and meaningful, the other person will notice your absence and make an effort. If they don't, it's a sign that their chapter in your life might be coming to a close, and that's okay. Stop writing is not about shutting down communication. It's about honoring yourself. It's about choosing relationships that uplift you rather than drain you. It's about understanding that communication, like any aspect of a relationship, requires effort from both sides. When you stop writing, you give others the opportunity to step forward and meet you where you are. And in the space that follows, you'll find clarity, peace, and the freedom to focus on connections that truly value and respect you. So pause, reflect, and remember your words, your time, and your effort are precious. Don't waste them where they aren't valued. We live in a world where reaching out, staying connected, and being available are seen as signs of care and dedication. But what happens when those calls, texts, and efforts are not reciprocated or even acknowledged? What happens when you're constantly the one initiating contact, whether through calls, messages, or reaching out, and yet your energy is met with silence or indifference? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The act of calling in this context isn't just about the phone. It symbolizes any form of reaching out, whether physical or emotional, where your efforts are not met with a corresponding level of care. Over time, this becomes exhausting, draining, and detrimental to your well-being. And the longer you continue this pattern, the more you lose touch with your true self, your needs, and your boundaries. So, what does it mean to stop calling, and why is it so crucial to protect your energy? Let's dive deeper into this concept. When you're always the one calling, always the one reaching out, and constantly the one putting in the emotional labor to keep a relationship or connection alive, something starts to shift within you. Initially, you may feel hopeful that your efforts will be reciprocated. You believe that if you just keep trying, if you just reach out one more time, the relationship will improve. But what you might not realize is that the longer you continue this one-sided effort, the more you erode your sense of self-respect and your energy. When you're always the one calling, you're not only exhausting yourself physically, but emotionally as well. You begin to feel unimportant, overlooked, or dismissed. You wonder, why am I always the one chasing? Why am I always the one trying? And the truth is, relationships, whether friendships, romantic partnerships, or poor professional connections, require effort from both sides. If you're the only one doing the work, it's not really a relationship. It's a one-way street that leaves you feeling depleted. One of the first steps to protecting your energy is recognizing when you're giving more than you're receiving. This might be hard to admit, especially when you care deeply about someone or something. But the signs of imbalance are often obvious if you take a moment to reflect. Are you always the first one to reach out? Do you initiate most of the plans or conversations? Are you met with silence or indifference when you share something meaningful? Do you find yourself feeling drained, frustrated, or anxious after interacting with this person? If the answer to these questions is yes, you may be caught in a cycle of overextending yourself. And while that may come from a place of love or desire for connection, it's important to recognize that this pattern isn't sustainable. Over time, it will drain you. Every time you call or reach out without receiving anything in return, you're giving away a piece of your emotional energy. And let me remind you, your emotional energy is precious. It's finite. It's the foundation for your sense of well-being, clarity, and inner peace. When you're constantly calling someone who isn't meeting you halfway, you're surrendering your most valuable resource. Think of your emotional energy like a well. When it's full, you feel vibrant, grounded, and connected to yourself. But if you're constantly giving without replenishing, you deplete that well. Eventually, you'll find yourself running on empty, unable to give anything to yourself or anyone else. By choosing to stop calling, you're making the conscious decision to protect your emotional reserves. You're choosing to stop pouring from an empty cup and instead focus on filling yourself up, whether through self-care, self-reflection, or seeking out relationships that reciprocate the energy you put in. When you stop calling, you're not abandoning the relationship, you're setting a boundary. Boundaries are not about rejecting others, they're about protecting your peace, your well-being, and your time. A healthy boundary is an act of self-respect and an opportunity for the other person to step up and meet you halfway. Setting boundaries might look like not calling someone when you know they haven't reciprocated in the past. It might mean taking a step back from a person who continually leaves you hanging. Boundaries aren't about cutting people off entirely unless that's what's best for you. They're about teaching others how to treat you with the respect and care you deserve. Remember, you don't have to apologize for protecting your energy. It's your right to prioritize your mental and emotional health over maintaining one-sided relationships. When you set boundaries, you create space for healthier, more balanced interactions. By stopping the cycle of endless calling, you're giving yourself permission to step back and reevaluate where you're investing your energy. The truth is, there are people and experiences that will meet you halfway, that will show up for you with the same enthusiasm, care, and energy that you give. When you stop calling those who don't reciprocate, you open the door to better, more fulfilling connections. And the best part, by stopping the calls, you create space for these relationships to emerge. Instead of chasing after those who don't value your energy, you attract those who appreciate and respect your presence. You give yourself the opportunity to build connections where both sides are equally invested, where the give and take is natural, not forced. Letting go of the need to call, to chase, to always be the one making the effort is an incredibly freeing experience. It's a release. It's a release. It's a surrender to what is, and an acknowledgement that you cannot control how others respond or show up in your life. You can only control how you choose to engage and where you place your energy. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to stop overextending. It means you care enough to recognize when a relationship is draining you rather than nourishing you. It means you care enough to stop calling when it's clear that the effort is not mutual. When you stop calling, you allow things to unfold naturally. You step into a state of allowing instead of forcing. You stop trying to control every outcome, every interaction. Life is full of natural rhythms and flows, and sometimes the best thing you can do is trust that what's meant for you will find its way to you. When you stop calling, you give people the space to show up for you in a way that is authentic and genuine. You create space for real, meaningful connections where the effort and energy you invest is always met with the same level of care and commitment in return. By stopping the constant calls and endless effort to keep relationships alive, you're not being cold or distant, you're protecting your peace. You're honoring your boundaries, your energy, and your emotional well-being. In doing so, you create the space for deeper, more reciprocal connections that truly nourish you. Remember, you are worthy of relationships that respect your energy. You don't have to chase after them. Instead, let go, protect your peace, and trust that what's meant for you will come without the need for constant calling. In a world that constantly demands our attention through calls, messages, social media, notifications, and countless interactions, it can be easy to lose sight of the most valuable resource we have, our energy. Whether it's friends, family, coworkers, or romantic partners, the act of calling, reaching out, and maintaining communication is an essential part of human connection. But what happens when we find ourselves continually doing the calling while others remain passive or unavailable? What happens when we realize we're the ones putting in all the emotional work while others are either indifferent or absent? At some point, the act of calling to check in, to reconnect, or to seek closeness begins to feel like a burden rather than a gesture of connection. It can drain you, leaving you feeling empty, anxious, and sometimes even resentful. The process of constantly initiating contact with people who don't respond in kind starts to erode your sense of self-worth, leaving you exhausted and emotionally depleted. So what does it mean to stop calling, and how does it protect your energy? Let's break this down. The first step in protecting your energy is recognizing when you're overextending yourself emotionally. It's easy to get caught in a cycle where you're the one always calling, always the one who's checking in, initiating plans, or reaching out after a disagreement. At first, it may feel normal, even natural. After all, we're taught to nurture relationships, to care for others, to show our love by being present. But the longer you take on the role of the sole initiator, the more you start to realize the imbalance in the effort. When you're constantly the one doing the calling, it's easy to miss the signs of emotional depletion. You might feel resentful when you don't receive a timely response, or you may feel frustrated when your efforts to reach out go unanswered. Ultimately, overextending yourself in this way leaves you drained. You start to feel that your worth is tied to how much you give, how much you chase, and how much you offer. But this dynamic isn't healthy, and it's not sustainable. The first step is to acknowledge when you're doing too much. 2, Understanding the drain of one-sided communication. One-sided communication isn't just exhausting, it's demoralizing. Communication at its core is an exchange of energy, a shared connection. It's meant to be reciprocal. You give a little and the other person gives a little, creating a balance that nurtures the relationship. But when the effort isn't mutual, when one person is always calling and the other isn't putting in the same energy, it feels more like a transaction than a connection. When you're the one always calling, you end up putting more emotional labor into the relationship than is being reciprocated. This could look like you initiating every conversation, having to follow up after every message, or always being the one to make plans. Over time, this imbalance causes emotional burnout. If the effort is one-sided, you're left giving more than you're receiving. This might leave you feeling unimportant, unappreciated, or even invisible. And while you may believe that the more you call, the more the other person will respond in kind, the truth is that this pattern rarely changes. One-sided communication often leads to resentment, frustration, and eventually emotional withdrawal. 3. The importance of setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful ways you can protect your energy. Boundaries aren't about punishing others or pushing people away. They're about taking responsibility for your own well-being. By establishing clear emotional boundaries, you signal to others that your energy is a finite resource and that it must be respected. In the context of calling, this might mean recognizing that you can't be the only one reaching out. It means stepping back and allowing the other person to take responsibility for maintaining the relationship. Boundaries may involve taking a break from constant calls. If you're the one always calling, it may be time to pause and see if the other person will step up and make the effort to connect. Communicating your needs. Sometimes people don't realize they're neglecting the relationship. A simple, direct conversation can help. For example, you could say, "I've noticed that I'm usually the one initiating contact, and it's beginning to feel one-sided. I need some reciprocity in our communication." Learning to say no, stop answering calls or messages when you're already emotionally drained, even if you feel obligated. Prioritizing your emotional health is key to protecting your energy. By establishing boundaries around communication, you teach others how to treat you and how to honor your time and energy. 4. Protecting your emotional well-being. When you're the one who's always calling, your emotional well-being can become tangled in the expectations you place on others to respond in a certain way. You may feel disappointed, anxious, or upset when the response you get doesn't match your energy or effort. By choosing to stop calling or reducing the number of times you initiate, you protect your emotional health. This doesn't mean withdrawing from the relationship. Rather, it's about taking a step back to give the other person the space to show up for you. This shift allows you to stop relying on others to validate your worth or measure your value based on how often they respond or engage. Stopping the calls creates room for emotional clarity. It allows you to detach from any outcome or expectation and focus more on your own peace. You'll begin to notice how you feel when you're not constantly reaching out, more balanced, more centered, more in touch with your own needs. 5. The freedom and letting go of the need for control. Calling someone, constantly chasing them, trying to keep the connection alive comes from a place of control. We believe that if we can just make one more call, one more effort, the other person will respond, and everything will be okay. But the truth is, we can't control how others show up in our lives. People will respond to relationships and communication in their own time, in their own way. Letting go of the need to control this dynamic by stopping the calls frees you from the burden of trying to orchestrate every interaction. It allows life and relationships to unfold naturally, without the pressure of forcing connections that aren't reciprocated. This shift toward acceptance doesn't mean you don't care. It means you trust that the people who are meant to be in your life will step forward on their own terms. 6. Creating space for healthy reciprocal relationships. When you stop calling and disengage from relationships where your efforts aren't reciprocated, you create space for healthier, more balanced connections. Relationships are meant to be a two-way exchange. When you stop calling those who don't meet you halfway, you make room for relationships that nourish you, energize you, and make you feel valued. You will begin to attract people who are aligned with your energy, people who make the effort to reach out, to check in, and to show that they care. These are the relationships where both parties contribute equally to the connection, where love, respect, and mutual support flow freely. By stopping the calls, you stop overextending yourself to those who aren't reciprocating, and instead, you begin to cultivate relationships that uplift and energize you. 7. Finding peace and stillness. When you stop calling, there's an opportunity for peace. You stop running after people who aren't meeting you where you are, and you stop trying to fill a void that can't be filled through endless outreach. Instead, you create a stillness that allows you to reconnect with yourself, your thoughts, your desires, and your emotional needs. This stillness creates space for inner peace. You no longer feel the constant need to chase after others or prove your worth through the amount of effort you put into maintaining a relationship. You begin to realize that peace comes from within, not from external validation or the constant noise of communication. 8. Trusting the natural flow of relationships. Finally, when you stop calling, you trust the natural flow of relationships. You stop trying to force connections and instead allow them to evolve naturally. Relationships that are meant to last will survive even without constant effort. Those that aren't will naturally fade away, and that's okay. Trusting the natural ebb and flow of life means you stop taking it personally when someone doesn't respond or doesn't put in the same level of effort. It's about understanding that life isn't about holding on to everything tightly. Sometimes relationships grow stronger when they are allowed to breathe and evolve in their own time. A final thought. Nah. By stopping the act of calling, you take back your power and protect your energy. You no longer allow your emotional resources to be drained by one-sided efforts or unreciprocated attention. Instead, you create space for balance, respect, and healthy relationships that honor both your needs and the needs of others. So, stop calling. Protect your energy. Trust that when you let go of the need to control, when you stop overextending yourself, you create space for the kind of connections that will truly enrich your life. In the end, stopping the cycle of constant calling, chasing, begging, and overextending is not about giving up on people. It's about giving back to yourself. It's about honoring your worth, protecting your energy, and recognizing that you deserve relationships and experiences that flow naturally with mutual respect and care. By setting boundaries, by choosing not to be the only one reaching out, you make space for deeper, more authentic connections, ones that are based on mutual effort, understanding, and love. When you stop chasing after those who don't see your value, you make room for the people who truly appreciate and reciprocate your energy. Remember, your worth is not defined by how much you give or how much you chase after others. It is inherent, unshakable, and always worthy of respect. So let go of the need to call, to beg, to chase. Embrace your own peace, trust the flow of life, and allow connections to grow organically with those who are meant to walk with you. Your energy is precious. Protect it. Your peace is invaluable. Honor it. And above all, know that you are more than enough, just as you are. Thank you.